Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and welcome to our 2017 NFL season preview for the Miami Dolphins. Now here's a look at what we have on tap for this preview. We will take a look at both sides of the ball in our offensive and defensive overview. We will also give you a reason for optimism as well as a cause for concern. And we will give you a breakout candidate who is an underrated player that'll end up playing a huge role this season. But first, let's take a look at some of the big storylines heading into the season as we get things kicked off in our 4-minute offense. The biggest story heading into the season for the Dolphins is the health of starting quarterback Ryan Tannehill. The 6-year veteran is coming off an admirable season, which saw him become much more efficient with the football. Tannehill seemed to click with new head coach Adam Gase, so if he's back at 100%, the hope is that the progress he made in 2016 should continue this season. Dolphins have a new defensive coordinator for 2017 and former linebacker coach Matt Burke, and Burke is taking over for Vance Joseph, who is now the head coach of the Denver Broncos. What Burke brings to the table is 13 years of NFL coaching experience on the defensive side of the ball, and a lot will be asked of him as the defense was an issue late last season for Miami. So what new wrinkles and adjustments can he make with a fresh set of eyes on the situation will be what to watch for in 2017. One of the first tasks for Matt Burke will be to increase the production from the defensive line, and all signs point to that being able to happen for Miami. The Dolphins brought in William Hayes and Andre Branch via free agency and addressed the defensive line with 3 picks in the NFL draft, and I still believe this is a strong unit, and we'll see if they can reach their full potential this season. Last year, running back Jay Ajayi was an integral part to the Dolphins' run to the playoffs. The third-year back out of Boise State posted 3 games over 200 yards rushing, helping balance out the offense in the process. And where you want to see the improvement in his game this season is for him to play with a little bit more patience so that he can become a much more consistent runner on a game-to-game basis. Ajayi is a volume ball carrier, which means that he gets better with the more carries he gets, and we'll see if that is, in fact, the Dolphins' game plan this season. Right now, everyone's record is at 0-0, and every fan is excited about the 2017 season, and every coach feels as though that this year's team has the right mix of everything to push them over the top. Well, here's why you should be optimistic about the 2017 season. If you're not optimistic and excited about this receiving core, then you just don't have a pulse. Miami has accumulated an impressive depth chart on the perimeter, and they're led by outstanding receiver Jarvis Landry, who made the Pro Bowl last year after finishing with 94 receptions for over 1,100 yards and 4 touchdowns. Both Kenny Stills and Devontae Parker combined for 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns. And the up-and-coming talent behind them with Leonte Carroo, Jakeem Grant, Rashawn Scott, and rookies Isaiah Ford, Drew Morgan, and Demoria Stringfellow will make the decision very hard for head coach Adam Gase. And I think it's a good problem to have, in my opinion. They're also stout at the tight end position as well, with Julius Thomas coming over from Jacksonville and Anthony Fasano signing via free agency. Both Marquise Gray and Thomas Duarte provide good value as third tight ends or H-back types. They, in my opinion, have the best receiving core in the AFC East. You also have to be optimistic about the Fins' offensive line. It's no surprise that their offensive line can't perform this well when you have 3 former first-rounders on it. We saw this offensive line gel last season and help pave the way for a 6-game winning streak that ended up helping them get into the playoffs. And that started with the domination of the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 6, where they ran up and down the field on that Steelers defense. Continuity is king, and I think this group will be even better in 2017. I'm also optimistic about the 2 rookies that were added in the NFL draft. Cordrea Tankersley out of Clemson was one of the best corners in the country over the last 2 seasons and immediately upgrades the depth and talent on the perimeter. I was also a big fan of Charles Harris's game out of Missouri. He was my 2nd rated 4-3 defensive end prospect in the draft because of his great first step and his ability to accelerate and close on the quarterback. The Dolphins needed to add more explosiveness off the edge, and they did just that in the draft with the selection of Harris. One of the causes for concern for the Dolphins this year is the Ryan Tannehill-Adam Gase relationship and or game plan. Now, what worked last year was that Gase took the ball out of Tannehill's hands and put it in the belly of Jay Ajayi. The result was a much more efficient Tannehill and a highly productive running game that led them to the playoffs. If Gase can remain steadfast with this formula and avoid the temptation to have Tannehill throw the ball 25 to 30 times a game, then they can build on that success and foundation that they laid last season. If not, they'll struggle to have a winning season. Another cause for concern would be the middle linebacker position. Now with the retirement of Cole Messi, the job for all intents and purposes will belong to rookie linebacker Raekwon McMillan out of Ohio State. Now McMillan is more than capable to handle the load, but Messi was one of those steady players for a long time on this defense, and his presence will be missed. Every year there's a player on the team that enters the season on the bubble. Maybe he's buried on the depth chart or he's an afterthought, but they end up playing a big role on the team by the season's end. So without further ado, here's my pick for the offensive and defensive breakout candidate. Second-year running back Kenyon Drake is ready for an increased role within this offense. Drake has a unique set of skills that's well-rounded. He's also one that has the ability that you can't coach, which is game-breaking speed. He was mainly the kickoff returner last season, averaging an impressive 30.5 yards per return with a 96-yard return for a touchdown. That's the type of speed and ability you want getting more touches on the regular offense. A defensive breakout candidate is surprisingly a rookie in Vincent Taylor out of Oklahoma State. Now, he wasn't the productive force on the stat sheet, but when you study his game, you can understand why. He was asked to occupy gaps at Oklahoma State, and with the Dolphins, he'll be asked to be an upfield penetrator, which suits his skills perfectly. Expect to see him utilized in the rotation heavily as a rookie. He enters a situation where he'll be able to excel in an area of need for the Dolphins. He'll be the third guy in rotation behind Ndamukong Suh and Jordan Phillips. All right, it's prediction time. So here's how I think the 2017 season will play out. The road to the Super Bowl for the Dolphins goes as follows. If Ryan Tannehill's efficiency continues to trek in the right direction, this offense can really take flight because, like I mentioned earlier, they do have the receivers on the outside to really cause problems for any opposing defense. They have the receivers and they have the depth. So if he can be efficient with the football, like we started to see at points in times during the season last year, this offense can really transform into one of the best ones in the AFC. And the defensive line has to get defensive. We're talking about guys that have to be able to get to the quarterback. Their run defense has to improve. They have to be able to get off the field on third downs. If they can't do that, then they won't have the success that they're looking for this season. And the Dolphins have to be able to get those explosive plays from their explosive players, guys like Cameron Wake and Ndamukong Suh, newly drafted Charles Harris. You look on the offensive side of the ball, Jay Ajayi, Jarvis Landry, Devontae Parker, Kenny Stills has to continue to be a deep threat on this offense. So if they can get those explosive plays from those explosive players on their squad, they can definitely find themselves in the thick of the Super Bowl race. I have Miami finishing third in the AFC East. Again, this is a toss-up between Buffalo and Miami for second place. The Dolphins, I think, have the pieces in place to be successful defensively. It's about putting that product out on the field offensively. If they can stick with the ground game and really wear teams down with that offensive line, then allow Ryan Tannehill to operate off play action, this team can play efficient, complementary football, which could find themselves in the heart of the AFC playoff race. So that's a wrap for this video. Be sure to follow me on all of my social media accounts as you see listed. And if you want to check out our NFL season previews, as you already should, visit our website at footballgameplan.com/2017 NFL previews. And finally, don't forget to subscribe on iTunes to Football Game Plan Podcast, where you can find all of our NFL shows like the Football Cypher, where Gene Clemens, Teron Davenport, Brandon Howard, and Chris James and I go around the table and break down the Dolphins' upcoming season in depth. You can find that podcast and our other podcasts on our website at footballgameplan.com/podcast or on soundcloud.com/FBGP podcast. Again, subscribe on iTunes. Just search Football Game Plan Podcast.